Okay, I had a little bit of a delay, so I didn't know that just ended. Welcome to Any Last Words. I'm your host, Joe, and tonight I have a very special guest, Mr. Robert Lasardo of Bridge of the Doomed, Anarchy Parlor, Lake of Shadows, The Mule. The list goes on. How are you doing tonight, Robert?
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm alive.
Yes, that is something that we should all be grateful for, especially now with everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm grateful for the little things, like waking up in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, my mantra is, well, all my limbs are attached. I'm not on fire, and no one's shooting at me. So it's a good way to start.
There you go. I love it. Can I ask what? I'm sorry?
It works for me. Everybody's got their thing.
Definitely. So can I ask, what have you been doing in our lockdown? I guess we're all California inmates in some way, shape, or form right now.
I've got these squirrels that come by my back door. I have this patio, so I've been becoming real acquainted with the squirrel community, and so I've been feeding them. They have a particular affection for salted cashews. So I've been feeding this family of squirrels. Pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Squirrels are they're interesting little creatures.
I dig them, man. They're low maintenance. Like, as long, I mean, it's conditional love. You got to show up with something or they don't want to deal with you. But I don't mind. Whatever makes them happy. They're low maintenance, man. They take care of themselves. And you get to watch them sit there all perched up, munching on a little nut. I don't know. They got these cute little furry ears and tail and everything. I don't know. They sit up like, Peter Cottontail looking around, man. I don't know. They're charmers. They know how to get me. They get to me.
Oh yeah.
I know how to get some cashews out of Robert. I know how to woo that guy. So anyway. So yeah, I bet you weren't expecting that answer, huh?
Not at all. Not at all.
I'm more concerned about the damn squirrels than I am my resume. Sorry, no disrespect, but I'll put it to the question. I'll give you due diligence to what you asked me. What I have been doing aside from my squirrel antics, I've been reading a lot. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of screenplays and stuff. I feel like I'm in a fortunate position where people are producing independent films who would like me to look at their material and consider, a situation of collaboration and working together. So I'm grateful to have that opportunity to read. And aside from that, what else have I been doing? I've been just riding my bike, trying to keep the physical strong, doing a lot of hiking and reflecting.
Oh, so, yeah. It's
been a kind of a monastic kind of time. I feel like a monk in the 15th century. It's kind of a new wrinkle. Not really, actually. It's an old wrinkle. So,
yeah. Well, we have a couple of comments already. We've got some people tuned in to see us, sir. We got Miguel Rodriguez says, oh, I guess it was for someone else. Oh, whatever, Miguel. I hate Miguel anyway. He's my producer for my other show. Tino says, what's up?
Hey, Tino.
And Miguel says, what's up? He's here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and I will do my very best to ask Mr. Robert over here, and he can answer them for you. Tonight, we're going to be getting to know Mr. Lasardo a little bit, and we're going to be getting to know some of the films he's been in and he's promoting, and I'm super excited. I actually, I just saw The Mule last week. That was a really good movie. That was a good movie. I liked it. You did an amazing job, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to see it.
I appreciate you being on the show. I really do, because like I said, I've seen a lot of movies that you've been in. Some I didn't even realize that you're in, because I was quite little when I'd seen them, but I was like, holy crap, like, wow.
Yeah, man. That's cool.
So, I guess on the note of maybe getting to know you a little bit, I read that you went to Stella Adler's conservatory school in New York.
Yeah, I did.
What was that
Yeah,
like?
well, I did a brief stint in the military. I did 4 years in the Navy, and when I got out, when I was discharged in 1985, I reconnected with my acting teacher, a good friend of mine named Anthony Apeson, and he connected me at first to the I think it was the coordinator there, the program coordinator at the Actors Studio in New York City, long before it was a TV show. And they had something there called the Working Observer Program. And what you did basically was you did grunt work. You know, you swept the steps, you cleaned the bathrooms, you painted things, you built sets in order to participate in, not participate, so that you could observe studio members, actor studio members, um, basically teaching and doing scene study and critiquing various members of the studio. It was an interesting process to watch some of these very famous actors that I grew up watching in movies, to see them walking through the corridors was kind of surreal. So that kind of put the hook in me in terms of getting excited about reintroducing myself to the craft and observing some of the great artists work out, so to speak. The actor studio stage, that theater in the round, was sort of like a gym for various actors, famous or maybe not so famous, to basically exercise, you know, and to work through various catharsis, you know, monologues, scene study, and have, you know, I guess selected members of the studio that sat in the hierarchy, observe those scenes, those monologues, and critique them for others to watch and observe that process. I thought that was fascinating. In conjunction with that, Anthony Apeson, my acting teacher, also recommended that I go to Stella Adler Conservatory and study there to get a different perspective in terms of method. You know, we're actor studio with Stanislavski method acting. Stella Adler was a kind of different take on that, even though she had also been of that school more or less. It was her adaptation to that method which made it her own and unique. I didn't study with her specifically. I studied with her protege, Tara Bowles, and that was useful. You know, I learned a lot in a short amount of time. I didn't spend a whole lot of time at the conservatory, but I found, it's like that saying, you know, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So the time I did utilize at the studio to be inspired by what I observed, and more of the hands-on application at Stellar Adler Conservatory, where you prepared scene, improvisational, character development. There was, you know, a very specific curriculum that, you know, was more, I think, structured than this ethereal method phenomenon at the Actors Studio. So it was nice to have the philosophized version of the craft and the very practical, pragmatic, hands-on school structuring to get in there, do scenes, have the scenes be critiqued by my teacher, be challenged to grow within various scene dynamics and character archetypes. So it was basically me reintroducing myself to what I had learned at Performing Arts High School. Because prior to the military, I spent 3 years studying method acting at the High School for Performing Arts in New York City.
That's so cool. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. With that, I actually have a couple of questions from the viewers.
Sure.
Let's see. Miguel asks, oops, we got more questions, so it keeps bumping me. Miguel asks, what's the hardest thing in your opinion when starting in the industry?
In terms of industry and the casting process, auditioning and all that, I think dealing with judgment, dealing with the evaluation that comes with that, experience. It can be motivating for some. It can also be horrifying. I mean, I remember times going on auditions where I literally shook, like my body shook, like I had this experience, this earthquake, psychically. But you go through this kind of like in battle. I've heard stories about men in combat where they told me their knees would shake. And then they'd bring up the old adage that the only difference between the hero and the coward is that the coward moves through the fear. The coward collapses in under the stress and doesn't move, and it basically stays in a state of paralysis. So I think auditions, in terms of the structuring of the industry and what they demand of you as a product, as a, yeah, okay, you're an artist, but you go to these auditions and you're dealing with casting directors, you're dealing with producers. If you're lucky enough to get to that stage of the audition where the casting director recommends you to read again, round two, so to speak, to meet with the director or producer, those experiences can be very exhilarating. And also, like I said, they can be extremely stressful. So I think learning how to navigate your own interpretation, your own evaluation of how you're treated or moving through that experience is where you develop character. So I say, in terms of the industry, what I remember most is the art of auditioning and like coming to terms with fear and not allowing the variables within the structure of the audition to interfere with my ability to perform effectively. For example, when you show up at an audition for whatever, television show, a movie, whatever, there's probably most likely the scenario, at least from what I remember back in the day, was that you'd be seated with many other actors auditioning for the same role. And I think because of some of the nervous energy and people not always knowing how to deal with that, it can, if you're not focused, you can allow yourself to be swayed out of what you need to manifest by participating in dialogue with other actors who are simply nervous and are, creating small talk, that kind of thing. So I learned, and what I realized was that auditioning in itself is probably one of the most challenging, rewarding, but one of the most stressful things I would ever have to embrace and encounter, and ultimately find a way to transcend it and master it, or at least be effective enough so that when I went into that room, regardless of what happened, me driving an hour and a half on the freeway, dealing with other actors in the room who are trying to deal with their nerves. Some people are not polite, some people are too nice. All of the stuff that is inadvertently set up to distract you, you have to find a way to make it all disappear so that when you step into the room and you meet the casting director, the director, and they bring you, you can within seconds be in the state of being that's required and communicate what they need you to bring about in terms of the material. If they want you to read a scene, they need you to immediately summon that that disposition, that frame of mind, so that you're locked into whoever it is you're reading with. So I find that is probably the most, that to me is where you discover who you are ultimately, as an artist, and the repetition of that process, because it never seems to end. You know what I mean? You talked about The Mule, right? The Clint Eastwood movie that I recently, a couple of years ago, was in. I had to audition for that, right? And so I put a camera on myself. Luckily, because of technology nowadays, you don't necessarily have to be in the room,
Yeah.
So when I put the camera on myself and send that audition to Clint Eastwood or to his casting director, they look at it and say, okay, we like this, but we want to give Robert some notes. And so then you're like, oh shit, I'm in the running. And so there's anxiety comes about. So to answer the question is, the biggest challenge is yourself in terms of how you deal with your own ego, the evaluation of those who are judging you and your ability through the auditioning process, and your ability to communicate the material effectively despite all of that. and hit the fucking target with enough impact that they go, whoa, who's that guy? Who's that woman? Who's this person? They're interesting.
Right.
There's something going on here that I want to see more of that. And so
Right.
I think that to me, for me, I'd say the most challenging thing in industry is to be effective at auditioning enough so that you make an impact, so they remember to remember you, and then ideally, that you get hired for the job.
Okay. So lots of practice and discipline. I take it. You seem like you're a very disciplined person. You were in the military, and you do a lot of auditions, and you went to acting school. We gotta with that. Excuse me. I with method acting. Do you find that it's hard to pull yourself out of that emotion, or hard to put yourself in that emotion when you're auditioning or playing a role where you have to invoke such a strong emotion? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it can be difficult. I wouldn't assign myself to the fundamentals of method acting. What I've gathered over time, because ideally ideally, I mean, I think we were, as I won't speak for other people, I'll speak for myself.
Right.
Ideally, what I've noticed is that the desire is to evolve. So I don't want to get hung up on any particular terminology. Says I'm this, I'm that. You learn through time to utilize various methodology to get you there. So it's kind of like whatever works, basically, is what I'm saying. So I don't
Okay.
know if I would call myself a method actor. So to answer your question, what I'd say is that I have found it very difficult at times to immerse myself into a state of mind that's required by the material, especially when the material is tortured or it indicates a kind of violent psyche. That can be hard. That can be
Right.
very hard, and how it affects your personal life. When they say cut, it's like that mechanism is stopped, but you're still kind of vibrating with the same mentality. So yeah, I
Exactly.
found it very difficult at times to process out, especially when you're doing that in media where lots of eyeballs are on it, and they start to audience starts to identify that manifestation with who you are, meaning they can't discern between the artist and your ability to evoke a character that's been written in the mind of somebody else's imagination that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
So I
Okay.
think it's not easy to process out of um, your own immersion, your own, and also to move through a world of perception in the minds of others that are also projecting something on you that is no longer relevant to your day-to-day life. Even though it may take a while for you to come out of that, you eventually do come out of it, and you discover your own unique happening that does not live on the page of somebody's interpretation of your existence. You come back to whatever your authentic self is, right? But then when their only frame of reference is the fiction, and the fiction is convincing enough for them to believe, holy shit, that guy Robert Lasardo, that guy with the tats, I wonder if he's really like that, or they make assumptions. And so you move through society in such a way, or through industry. Let's just forget society. The world's a big place. Let's just say industry. The temptation for people in industry, producers, writers, is to also, if to potentially lock you up in that perception because they've seen nothing else to the contrary. So that's where the challenge ultimately is, to do something that shows a different manifestation. So they see diversity.
Okay. Okay. We have a question from Jesse Nahara. He would like to know, how do you use real life personal experiences to influence the method that you use when you're pursuing a role?
It works a couple of ways. Most recently, what I've noticed is that And I'm going to answer. I'm going to answer the second part. The second part is the second part of the question. I think indicates that up to now, the evolution of the characters that I've been allowed to portray suggests something to people who are paying attention, especially people who are writing material. And they pick up nuance, they pick up these details, these elements that they observe. And then what happens is I'll get a script like the one I'm reading now, and I'll say, huh, this is interesting. This reminds me of something. This is maybe not, it could potentially be derivative, similar to something I did prior. But what it does is it represents the progression, the evolution of this type of material. And with respect to the writer, it's not like what I'm reading is substandard or stupid or anything. What I'm noticing is that the impact of those characters is living on after me, and those who observe it interpret it, write something else that kind of picks up where that leaves off. So I know where to go in terms of character development. I say, oh, okay, I know this character. And how I tie it in with, in terms of the question, with the personal triggers is that I feel that the material that I'm invited to participate in and work on usually involves a damaged kind of the framework of the mind is usually pretty staticky and turbulent. And so I've had kind of my life has been kind of interesting that way. So I think I'm able to, when I read the material over and I read the dialogue, say if it's a military guy who was in, say, Afghanistan or Kuwait, I was in the military. If there's an aspect of that character where there's a sadistic nature or an intelligent nature, a philosophical aspect of the character, whatever's going on there, if you live long enough and allow yourself experiences in life to happen, suddenly you go into this. I go into this catalog of my own Encyclopedia Britannica. Oh yeah, I was in the military. Okay, the character says this. Oh yeah, it's as if, meaning the as if is that may not be exactly what happened to me, but it's similar enough that I can borrow from my own experience, lend it to that, and it simply works. So it doesn't, your personal experience doesn't have to be identical to what the material points to, but if there's something in there that's close enough to trigger the emotional or psychological manifestation, then it seems to work for me that way, that I can just pick it. And if I can't find it in my personal life, if I haven't watched a fellow soldier get blown apart in front of me, I can remember maybe a time I witnessed violence in my life. Well, I remember in New York, I watched 4 guys beat some guy to death, and he bled to, the blood came out of his nose like a faucet. So I remember witnessing things in New York that were extreme. So then you put a military uniform on it, you dress it up differently, and then all of a sudden you can relate. You see, so if I have experiences that are similar but not identical to draw off of, if I don't have those identical experiences, like in the scene it says he was chased by Indians and cowboys. Well, I didn't grow up in the days of Indians and cowboy, right? That's where imagination comes into play. That's where if you read something long enough over and over again, like a story, your own projector, your own camera in your mind makes the story visually stand before you. You make your own movie. And when you watch those characters kind of come to life, like the way a child fantasizes with little toys and believes that these plastic little objects have independent personalities and are actually talking to one another, it's not much different when you read stories and screenplays or books about people. The more you read it, and the more you allow yourself to be enveloped by that fantasy, it's no longer a fantasy, it becomes very real. So then the imagination is key to unlock all sorts of potential in terms of authenticating those experiences, what the scene requires in terms of focus, emotional discontent, psychological disposition. All of those things come about based on your ability to go so deep into the story that it becomes the more dominant reality. There's no gap. It's not like I'm trying to be this. You become it. If you read it enough and you dive deep enough and you allow your imagination, like a child, to believe that you can really fly, then suddenly you're levitating above the ground. It just happens.
I love it. I love it. That was a great, perfect way to put that. And Annie also comments on that. She says it helps to relate personal life to characters, easier to produce realistic characters. I totally get it. Yeah, and also, by the way, you also have a lot of love going on here. It says, I admire you a lot. You're the man.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome work. Hope you're doing well. Great advice. Yeah, you got a lot of love going on right now.
Thank you, everyone who's watching, and I'm glad it communicates, because I wonder sometimes, you know, if I'm going crazy.
Shit, I think a lot of us are fucking feeling like that lately.
Right?
Starting to question myself some days. Do I really exist? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, what's that saying? If you can ask yourself the question about sanity, then you're in good shape. It's when you no longer ask the question and you make assumptions along whatever line you're on, as bizarre and absurd as that line may be, without any reflection, then then maybe there's cause for concern. So I guess when you continue to question where you stand, not just for yourself, but in relationship to other people, in terms of your interpersonal relationships and just the people you run into on the street. You need to maybe do some reflective consideration, maybe, and that not everyone does it, but I think my point is 100 years later that the fact that I'm asking the question is probably a good sign. So when I stop asking, then maybe they need to send the man with the nets after me.
Well, how will they know when you stop questioning? Oh.
I think by the way I manifest, basically by how I function in how I animate in the world. When people's vibration goes off and they kind of check out into that weird space, you kind of can feel it, and you not only can see it in the eyes, you can hear it in the way they speak, and also the way they kind of they're on the planet with us, but they're not in the same world. You can tell when people click into a whole other frequency, man. I can, and I think that's how you can tell, man, when someone's fucking okay. You're in bozo land, man. Okay, cool. Go do it. I hope you can find your way out of that rabbit hole, man, or whoever, because I've had people that I care about in my life who've gone down the rabbit hole. I've gone down the rabbit hole. So I think your ability to find your way out of that, whether it's to your art, creativity, hobbies, reading, physical activity, whatever the discipline or escapism is that's healthy, that allows you to go through hell, so to speak. Like the saying, if you're going through hell, keep going, so that you can discover something within that experience that proves a positive, ultimately.
Yeah. We need to stay healthy right now, even mentally.
Yeah, why not? I'm trying.
I know. Keep it up. Seems like you're doing good. Keep it up. Keep going for walks and hikes.
Yeah, no doubt. I will.
And now it's starting to get hot, so I've been kind of questioning doing all that right now. I'm like, even early in the morning here, it's really hot, and I'm like, I'm too white. I'm too fucking white for that shit. I can't. I don't tan. I'm half white, but I don't tan. I just get a darker shade of pink. So, yeah.
They say the sun isn't as friendly as it used to be, so maybe you have an advantage by sparing yourself the radiation that's coming at you, man. I don't know. Maybe it's a situation of the cup is half full. Maybe it's best to stay out of the sun. Not for your vanity's sake, Joe, because you look fine to me. It's more about, I think, just for health reasons. I mean, I like the sun. I dig it. It makes me happy to be at the beach and look at the ocean, get real with the the cosmic, happening, watch life just do its thing.
Yeah.
So the sun is just it's just one of the variables that come along, but I dig it. It's not, I feel better but I don't like suffocating. I want to be able to breathe. Thus, the beach, the desert's a whole other deal, man. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, I think also I'd probably be inside, hidden away from the intensity of that fire in the sky, unless
Yeah.
I could find myself in a situation to go jumping around and surfing or in the ocean or something. That would be cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would take the beach over the desert any day. I grew up not too far from the beach. I can't swim, but I grew up not that too far from the beach, and I miss it so much living down by LA because I live in a bowl. So I live in the armpit of California. So
Well, hey, I mean, hopefully in time when they release the grip on us, and and Big Brother says, okay, you can go out in the yard a little bit and play. You can get in your vehicle and drive down to Ventura Beach or whatever the hell. Go down the coastline, give yourself a cookie, Joe. Go
I
by the
know.
coastline, watch the dolphins, look at the beach break, look at the surfers,
So so
breathe, listen to the music,
relaxing.
man. Just give yourself that, because if they say, hey, you can do it, why not take advantage, man? Just get in the vehicle, drive a couple hours, and just give yourself a beach day, man. I'm telling you, I lived in California and Los Angeles for decades,
Mhm.
and it took me 20 years to find the beach. I mean, I'd seen the beach, I knew it
Okay.
was there, but I was so preoccupied with auditions, movies, Vanity Fair, looking at that reflection of the guy in the mirror, this thing, I've got to make it. These all the stuff I got to do. I've got to continue to validate this idea of my existence in relationship to commerce, and what show am I on? People ask me, so what's the next thing, man? So you get caught up in this fucking blender of
Yeah.
ego, maniacal, blah, 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 that you don't take the time to stop and say, wait a minute, man. The beach is like, because I lived in Santa Monica for a while, I lived in Venice for a while. I
Oh,
was like, oh
nice.
shit, the beach is right there, man. So like, Rob, just fuck all this industry shit. Turn the ego trip off. Take narcissism and drown narcissism in the fucking, kill that fucker and that reflection. Take your reflection, take it all, just throw it away. Take that all off, man, and just go and become like everything. Like go to the ocean. And so it took me like fucking 20 years to finally sit down one day at Zuma Beach. And it was like March, and the sun was out. It was kind of chilly. I had my hoodie on. I brought some books with me, some poetry. I brought a pen and paper. I did some writing, did some reading. And I was like, holy shit, where have you been? Where have I been, man? You know what I mean?
Right.
I've been caught up in some, in that thing. So you get caught up in the matrix. You get caught up in that stuff. And so I think it's important for all of us, no matter what the hell we do for a living, in terms of
Mhm.
the, and that game, the money game, that we go. And I think that's why people still, with even the threat of the virus, you hear stories of people still flocking to the beach for that release, to be
Mhm.
connected with the life force, man, so they
Yeah.
can come back to their innocence. You know what I mean? I think for me, it was to come back to my innocence, because so much of what I was doing within the framework of film suggested something in the imaginations of other people, that I started to find Robert Lasardo based on their interpretation of me. And that has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with something they created, which is fine,
Right.
because they have to sell something. I get it. But you got to be careful. You talk about processing. You ask me, well, how do you process out of the characters? You got to get real with yourself spiritually, I guess, give it a name, whatever you want to call it, spiritual, so that you can come home to that innocence that I described. Some people take nature walks. Some people go into the woods. Some people go into the beach. Whatever it takes to rediscover the authentic self, so that you can enjoy being creative, and that acting, singing, dancing, painting, being a poet, whatever the creative choice is, that doesn't become a problem because somebody decided to market that ability and turn it into some kind of commodity that's measured and weighed on the scale of commerce. Or how big is it, Joe? Huh? What's it worth? Huh? You know what I mean? How big is it? Is it good? And what's it worth? This is a numerical mathematical equation. And I'm not a fucking banker, man. I'm an artist. So to me, the banking element doesn't really come into play. You know, so when people start asking you questions about math, is it a big movie, Joe? Is it a big movie, Rob? How many, you know, when the evaluation is that they miss the point, which is that you're doing something ideally you love and you're having fun with, then that should be the celebration. That's the trophy, man. The joy that it brings you, knowing that you've been able to make a dream come true, so to speak, and that people are hiring you to perform, to create, or at least to be a co-creator with somebody else and feel a part of something, because everyone behind you in your life said, well, Joe, you're never going to amount to nothing. Rob, you're never going to, you can't do that. All these, you cannot, you will not. You move past that mindset into a situation where you can and you will. And then you're like, wow, this is really groovy, man. This is beautiful. This is everything I hope for, until you share that good news with a banker and they try to confiscate it with that measurement that tries to define it based on how much is it worth, Joe? How big is it? What kind of studio is releasing the movie?
That sounds like some government
DVD, or is it going to be, you know, all these questions don't come from love. They don't come from artistic mindset. They come from banking mentality, which is fine. I guess we need the banks, but don't get confused, man. Like, banking has nothing to do with being a fucking artist.
Right.
And how much a movie made at the box office is none of my concern, man. What my concern is, did I do a good job? Did I serve the cause, which is the collaboration of creative minds and hearts to fulfill what's required of me as an artist, man? Everything else is out of my hands. It has nothing to do with me. But, you know, it's not easy to move past that thinking. It took me 20 years and such to get past that hypnotism, that programming, get to, so I could sit on the beach and feel that was enough. That was okay. Look, what are you doing today, Rob? Hey, Rob, what are you doing today, man? What are you up to? Tell me what's going on. What's the news? What's the latest? Well, I'm just sitting here and sitting where? I'm at the beach. Oh yeah, yeah. What are you doing? Just sitting, breathing, looking at the water, man. It's fucking really cool. Yeah, oh, okay. And then some people like get it, and other people like, okay, because they're hoping they want something juicy. You know, they want you to help them. They want to hear something that helps substantiates the illusion of goal-orientated search and achieving something, so that you can go to some place that never fucking existed to begin with. And so they're caught in that illusionary world, and you're like, wow. And you don't hate on them. You're like, you try to help them vicariously by example that, hey man, there's something else to do but beside answering my phone when I'm on the beach and text messaging or checking an Instagram and all this shit. Like, how about just being, man, hanging with somebody, like maybe, hang with Joe at the beach and like, hey, man, what are you doing? We're just vibing. We're not talking. This is really nice. I know, it's nice. Wow, it's beautiful.
Just in the moment of everything. Just being in the moment.
Yeah, to me, that's living the dream.
Right.
That's living the dream.
Yeah. That's just living, period. That's how everybody should do that. I mean, people should, and it sucks because I try to go a lot of places and put my phone away and not sit there and be like this, because I am always like this, because I have, like, people are always texting me about something. I try to put it away, and then I look up and everybody is just even little kids like this. They have no clue what's going on around them, oblivious to everything. They can't appreciate anything. It's just, they're there all the time, and it sucks. And I don't see how people can live like that all the time.
It's a tool, right? I think we're kind of like children in terms of what top technology suggests. Mm-hmm. And since we're children in the infant stages of this technology boom, we're kind of stumbling through it, right? So I'm trying to be positive about this and not so apocalyptic, right? I'm not saying you are, but I tend to do that. So I want to be positive with this. So if we are collectively as a species moving through this infant stage of realization about what technology suggests, mm-hmm. we're stumbling, meaning we quite haven't figured out how to balance it. Meaning, like, it's a tool, right? Cool. but it's not God, and it doesn't define us. It's just an aspect of what this creation, cosmic, whatever cosmic mandala is, this physical density that we all call reality on Earth. It's another opportunity for us to experience life through a portal now with this glass thing, and I can talk to you, and that's cool, and we can have fun with it. But when we become dependent on it, like kind of like a drug, and we can't discern or find balance between what physical three-dimensional life requires, meaning getting up, going out into the world, putting your feet in the grass, or going on a hike, going to the beach. When you lose sight of your physical body in relationship to Mother Earth, like the Indians, right? Like being connected to light, to stone, crystals, finding ways to remind the heart and mind that it's important to move about physically in the world and have discoveries that are mesmerizing in terms of what nature, despite concrete jungle, suggests. There's still, even in Los Angeles, a mountains, there's trails, there's all kinds of opportunities to reacquaint oneself with the physics of a physical, spiritual, emotional dynamic that's beautiful. And then when you're done, then you do that, right? And then, okay, now I got to call some people. Now I got to go on, I got to go on my phone. And it's not like, oh, that's bad. It's about finding balance, I think, between the virtual world and the actual one, and not getting confused between the two, man. I think we're still trying to figure that out spiritually, maybe. We're still young in this. And maybe if we can grow up a little bit, then the devices won't become a problem. They'll just be an added feature to our existence rather than something that defines our existence.
Okay. I like that. I like that. Okay. Couple comments real quick. Jeremy says, man, you're woke. How awesome. Glad to see not everyone in Hollywood plays the game. I could hang out with this guy. I like your attitude.
Thank you.
Ingrid said, preach it. And Michael Frunti, I know Michael, but I'm horrible with names. Anyway, he says, hey, Robert, you may not remember me, but I was the PA on Lake of Shadows. Chopped it up about life and stuff. Wanted to thank you for that.
Right on. Hey, let's talk about Lake of Shadows.
Yes, let's talk about some movies.
And Michael Rodriguez and all the people that worked so hard to bring that about. Let's talk about that.
Yes, yes, yes. Lake of Shadows. I am excited to see it when it is done. I just had Tino on Monday to talk about Lake of Shadows because he was in it also. I think he has a bigger, a different hand in it also, doesn't he? He has his executive producer. I forget.
Our relationship dynamic, Tino and I. So I would say that my feeling about Tino is he wore many hats.
Yes.
Within this production, many hats.
Yes, and Tino's a good actor too. He's cool to hang out with.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay. Yeah. I just watched Anarchy Parlor the other night.
Oh, right on.
And I loved the plot of the movie. I liked how it was like a twisted tattoo artist that. It's a horror movie. I don't want to ruin it for anybody because I want other people to go watch it if they haven't watched it. But I fucking loved it. I thought it was great. I loved your character. I thought it was kick-ass.
Thank you.
I did jump and scream a little bit at certain parts, and I usually don't do that. So, but I thought that was a kick-ass movie. I really liked it a lot. For those of you, if you haven't seen Anarchy Parlor, you can go on Amazon Prime. I rented it off of Google the other night, so you could rent it off of there. Yeah. So let's talk about some movies, Robert.
Yeah, no, it was that was a very challenging ordeal in terms of the filming that was required, or at least let's just say the logistics in relationship to the filming that was required to make Anarchy Parlor, because we filmed that in Lithuania, Northern Europe, and it's beautiful. Beautiful landscape. It's a beautiful kind of haunted with so much lovely horrific history. And so I think it was appropriately placed in terms of setting for that film. A good marriage. I just wish in terms of the writing, we would have explored more of the underpinnings or these characters that I observed in the city that we filmed in, kind of, reminiscent of the old, let's just say the change of the guard from some of the, I guess, how do I say this? Trying to find a delicate way to say this. There's still a lot of leftover. There's still in Lithuania, especially Vilnius, where we filmed. I think I pronounced that right. Vilnius. Where we filmed historically during World War II was a place that the Nazis came through and shot up the buildings. To this day, you can still see bullet holes in the buildings where they came through and killed a bunch of people. And Jewish people were brought out into the center square and beat to death. So there's a history there that is kind of, the stones are soaked with blood, so to speak. And, not to cast or say anything negative about Lithuania, I fell in love with the place. I didn't want to leave. Like I said, it doesn't mean that just because these things happened that it was a nightmare to be there. I thought it's one of those places where you can't fake, man, like you come across certain kind of, that's what I'm talking about, the film. It would have been great to get an idea of some of the people that the character that I portrayed called Artist, some of the people that he may have interacted with outside the tattoo shop, to get a sense of that world more literal, not so mystical, because the character that I portray is a philosopher. Clearly he's a bit disturbed, does things that are violent to serve the cause of this mafioso that he works for, by cutting off the skin on people's bodies, etc. So there's definitely a very violent aspect of that disposition of character, which was necessary in relationship to circumstance. But I thought it would have been more interesting to see him function, the artist, with other people either similar to him, like men that he worked for, or other characters that I kind of, because I had time in Lithuania when we weren't filming to become acquainted with some of the locals and the tattoo shops. And apparently I've got some fans over there. My friend Eddie over there, who's got a shop, really nice guy, took me in, tattooed me, hung out, fed me. So it was interesting to listen to him talk, get a sense of his world through his perception of what it was like there. You've got the Cold War from Russia, because at one time Lithuania was part of Poland, or at least it was considered Poland, and the Russian influence and the KGB and a lot of like retired KGB people still kind of lurk around in that world. So that's why there's this nefarious element present while we were filming that to me was synonymous with what the artist's situation suggests about his connection to organized crime. And I thought it would have been really cool if the writers would have explored that, so that you got a better sense of the world that he was functioning in. And right. I think that would have gave the film more weight. Now, I think it's a good movie. I'm glad you like it. But I'm very, I'm very critical about my own work, about movies I'm in, simply because I think all artists who are really driven to do the work have that itch to want to make it better, especially when you come up with teachers that are always critiquing your scene study and what you do and say, okay, I like what you did, Joe, but in this one moment when you do this, I need to feel more. I need to see the tears come out, but I want you to fight that more. So I think it's the same with films. There's things that work in films in terms of performance, and there's things that are uneven in performance. There are things in terms of cinematography that work well, that don't work well throughout, and storyline, dialogue. All these things factor into whether you have a good film, a mediocre film, or a superb film, because you cover all the bases. So I look at it analytically objective like that, because you want it to be as good as it can be, and so that's why I addressed that aspect of it. But my point being about filming in Lithuania being extremely challenging on so many levels because of the vibration of that land and what happened there, and because still I felt, even while we were filming, as seemingly benign as it was as a tourist place for Americans to go, because people go to Lithuania. they traveled Northern Europe. Despite what the film suggests about don't go to places like this, it's a very beautiful city with incredible buildings and artwork and buildings that have been standing since the 18th century. A friend of mine took me to a church that was hundreds of years old, and I touched the stone of the wall, and it was really something else. I felt like I was teleported back in time. Just walking around certain streets in Lithuania felt like I walked literally through a time machine. And so it was beautiful, but then when you meet certain people, like the tattoo artists, and you hear what's going on and some of the politic play with the film production and certain businessmen that are behind the scenes of the production and some little skirmishes here and there, and you get a sense that maybe some of us aren't safe filming this movie because some people got pissed off. I didn't piss anybody off. They actually, all the Lithuanian mafiosos kind of liked me. They kind of took me under their wing, but it wasn't the case for everybody. There was some weirdness going on. There's always weirdness going on, Joe, by the way, when you make movies, whether it's in America or in Northern Europe, on the fucking moon. Sooner or later, somebody's ego is going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get butt hurt. Money's going to end up missing. Somebody's going to point a finger. Next thing you know, the knives and guns are out. And so Lithuania was no different, So it was interesting to be in a place like that when the guns and knives came out. You know what I mean? When we're making a movie that suggests extreme fucking violence, man. You know what I mean? So I thought, it's interesting. I wonder if some of the actors or producers on this fucking film are going to end up in this movie for real. You know what I mean? Like tortured to death and dropped off in a ditch somewhere, man.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, for real. And anybody who's listening to this who was a part of that, yeah, I'm talking about you. No, I'm just kidding. Not really. Not really. Not really.
Maybe. Annie said,
this is where you segue in, Joe, and lighten it up a little bit.
yeah. On that note.
Okay, Rob, easy. Calm down, boy. Easy.
I'm gonna say yes, man. Annie said when she lived in Germany, she said we did walk through I don't know how to pronounce this, Dachau, Dachau. I don't know how to pronounce that. She says, which was a concentration camp. You could feel the history in the walls. You can feel the heaviness. I can imagine that. I mean, and just the thought of how many people had been in this exact spot, how many people have touched this exact same wall over 100 years worth of time, and all this shit that has gone on in the world. Like, I can just imagine what that feeling. Well, I mean, yeah, just I can only imagine what that feeling could be like to have that heaviness and to know that there was so much, because it's been there for so long. Holy shit.
Well, I think in terms of catharsis, if you're making a movie, unless it's a comedy, if you're making a movie that's kind of intense, it kind of lends itself to the fiction, doesn't it? That you can draw off of things that are, still vibrating, as your friend suggests in Germany, that, you know what I mean, kind of assists, with the grittiness or whatever stage you've built that you want to fortify with some kind of, whether the characters, whatever, that it stands on something that's, effective because there's a history there. It's not plastic. It's not a mall. It's not some horseshit contrived background visual that has no life in it. And I think when people walk through situations, whether they're in Italy, Germany, Japan, the moon, wherever they are, if they're sensitive, they definitely are moved by the history and the fabric of that, that location suggests, and are moved by it, and your disposition, like a piece of clothing you put on. Wow, I feel different when I wear this jacket. I feel different when I put this hat on. I feel this way when I have the hoodie on. I feel this way when I have a tie and suit on. When you go to a place, it's the same thing. And if you allow yourself to be affected and entranced by it, then you become that. Like, there's an actor, I'm not into name dropping. So there's this actor, pretty well known. He did a movie about Russian mafioso. He went to fucking Russia and he hung out with some of these Russian mafiosos, and he just lived and breathed the landscape of that world, man. So it would kind of become part of his DNA, you know. And so I think, you know, I know we got off topic, but a little bit in terms of people traveling around. But you know, because I want to bring this back to creativity and to filmmaking and what artists need and utilize to authenticate the experiences they're in. Like if you want to make a romantic comedy, maybe, or a comedy, or some kind of romantic thing, maybe Italy is a good place, you know, because what Spain and Italy and these places suggest about, you know, the artwork and the statues of beauty and love
The
making,
language of love. Yeah.
yeah, and celebration of life, right? So maybe places like that definitely are, no, not maybe, they are indicative of that influence when you're filming something, you know. I think I forget the Woody Allen movie where he's something in Paris. I forget the first part of the title, but you know, something in Paris. So a guy who's romanticizing Paris, but in a different timeline, and meets characters that are his heroes. In the novels that he reads, you know, and so he goes back in time and sees a Paris, I think of the 1940s or something like that, and it's kind of beautiful, you know. And so his wife's like, "Where were you all day?" And so Woody Allen's spoof is that the character was so enamored by that time period that he was literally transported back into time while, you know, traveling around France. Well, they're living in 20th century, 21st century, doing what people do then. This guy's hanging out with, like, you know, these landmark writers, these historical writers and people that influenced his whole life. So it's kind of cool how Woody Allen took that backdrop, and for certain characters, they functioned in modern day France. This guy went back into time and pulled as much richness off of that experience as possible. So it's a beautiful kind of case study of how certain places can influence people's imaginations and hearts and spirits so much that they literally want to travel back in time because they romanticize a certain period of history, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like wherever it is, could be the Roman Colosseum. Look at that movie Gladiator. Apparently Ridley Scott had an affection for the history of the Roman Empire that he resurrected, you know, Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic Caesar, to communicate his philosophy in relationship to the shift that was occurring in the Rome and the collapse of that empire and in the details of that. So it's interesting to watch the beauty of the CGI bring back to life the Colosseum, the statues, so much so that you're like, holy shit, I wonder if it was really like this, because this is fucking mind-blowing, right? So you look at that and you go, wow. So apparently there's certain directors and people that are fascinated by certain times in history. And it's beautiful that you can watch movies now that take you there, and you can almost feel like you actually were there for real, man. You know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I do. I get what you're saying, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I want to go back in time. Why don't we have jetpacks and time machines yet?
Did you want to talk about anything else, a specific? You said you want to talk about, when we talked earlier, you mentioned something about performing arts high school. Did you want to talk about that, or did you already cover that? Is it kind of like a you know?
Well, I wasn't aware that you went to two different schools. I thought maybe you just went to the one, but when I looked up, when I was like looking back on your stuff, it said the Stella Adler.
Right.
That was the only one I saw. I didn't know that you went to two different.
Well, yeah, the reason I'm bringing this up, Joe, not to interrupt you, is that when you and I talked, you brought something up to me that I found endearing. You said that you thought it was really cool that I attended a high school that was not, you know, it was very, you know, that it was unusual in terms of what the movie Fame suggested, that the open classrooms, this kind of celebration of school rather than dreading going to school. It's like, wow, I can't wait to go to school. So I found it very endearing that you thought, wow, it must have been really cool. I can only imagine what it must have been like for you to go to a high school where half of your day or part of your day is dedicated to doing theater, doing all the things that are required to utilize imagination and play and have fun with that. You know? So I thought maybe we could, that's why I brought it up.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought maybe I had misread information, and I was like, oh, well, I sound stupid now. It didn't say a
No,
high
no.
school here. I thought it was high school. So,
Yeah, no, no, we jumped the timeline. Basically,
yeah.
Stella Adler is correct. I went to
Okay.
the Stella Adler Conservatory after I was discharged from the Navy in 1985.
Okay.
From 85 to 86, that's when I was part of the working observer program at the Actor Studio and studied with Tara Bowles in New York City at the
Mhm.
Stella Adler Conservatory. Um,
Oh,
Prior to that, to the military, before I went into the Navy, I went to the High School Performing Arts in New York City. For those people who don't know what that means or what that is, it's basically in the 1970s there was a school that allowed basically it was a public school that allowed inner city children to audition every year, 2,000 applicants every year, and out of the 2,000, 72 or so were picked to participate in the curriculum of either drama, dance, or music. So
okay.
the Performing Arts High School in New York City that I went to, it was called PA. It wasn't LaGuardia School yet. It was a building on, I think, 46th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue in New York City, like this kind of, landmark building, very old type building that's, since then changed hands and become something, a different entity. But back then, it was a physical school that people like Al Pacino went to, Freddie Prinze, Liza Minnelli, a whole host of people that went on to have very promising career went to the High School Performing Arts. And it's a wonderful opportunity for, like I said, for inner city kids who basically didn't come up with anything, didn't have any money to go to specialized private schools to get the kind of training that you probably couldn't get anywhere else, that you would have to pay for. So it was a unique kind of circumstance within that timeline where they allowed something like that to happen, and to also have the freedom within classrooms to be less rigid in curriculum with theater and voice and diction and scene study. It was kind of a wonderful, like, kind of fantasy. There was, in retrospect, when I was in the military and I was missing home, I think the most enchanting, favorable memories I had that I kept close to my chest was being simply in class and listening to the teacher talk and having friends in school that we did scenes together with, and having a scene partner and pretending, reading plays together, studying the dialogue together, putting on a show together. An opening night comes and there's an audience and we perform together and we all experience the sheer terror of anxiety right before the performance. I remember like it was yesterday, man, walking through those corridors in this very old, rickety character school with the chains hanging from the ceiling with these, like, not fluorescent lights, these big bulb lights that, throwback from the 1940s, 50s architecture, a kind of school that was built around the turn of the century. So even the building itself suggested a kind of fantasy, because it was unlike a lot of the more modernized, sterile buildings made of concrete with fluorescent lights, and this kind of uh, soulless environment. Man, performing arts seemed to possess a spirit in of itself, with all the people that resonated throughout the decades that went through those hallways, giving a piece of themselves to that experience. You could feel it in the building, man. If you were sensitive, you could feel that the spirit of creativity and passion for dance, music, for theater was present, not only in the teachers that would really get in your shit if you didn't carry your weight in preparation for your theater, but the building too, man. There was aspects of it that just, you knew that you were in a sacred place. I knew this for certain when my acting teacher got in front of us and literally got down on his knees and kissed the floor. We were in like some kind of dance hall place where there was a lot of foot traffic during the
Uh-huh.
day. It was like during lunch, it posed as a cafeteria. During the day and in the morning and the second part of the afternoon, it doubled as a dance studio because it had these hard marble floors. So it was interesting to see the teacher didn't really care about how many people walked all over that marble floor. He literally got down, Mr. Apes, and kissed the floor
Oh my
and
gosh.
said, "This stage, my friends, is a sacred place, and please don't dishonor it. So when you stare before us, me, your fellow peers, your classmates, please remember where you're standing is sacred ground. And when he kissed that ground, I knew he wasn't just talking out of his butt. He
Right.
believed in it so much to do something like that. You know, not the most sanitary of things to do, but for me, it showed me, because I don't care about none of that. I said, wow, he's for real, man. He kissed the fucking floor just now, literally kissed it. Because to him, that's the altar. For some of us, some people, if you're a Christian, it's this. If you're Buddhist, it's that. If you're Muslim, so everyone has their altar. And for him, the stage, the altar, was that floor, man. Don't matter what form the stage takes. It could be Carnegie Hall. It doesn't matter how it's dressed up. It's
Right.
the spirit of the people that give their sweat, their blood, their tears, their devotion to that practice that people come to watch and go, wow, man, for a moment in my life tonight, I watched a play or a musical, a movie, and now I was lifted out of my mediocrity, my existence, and I feel like, wow, anything is possible. And you know what? I want to do that. Where do you think it comes from, man? Like, you think somebody just came up with it? It's because people see things that inspire them. And I'm not talking about this shit, all that phenomenon. I'm talking about when you witness performance and characters in a fiction that don't seem like fiction anymore, and you can relate to one of those characters in that story, and you go, wow, man, that person is speaking on my behalf. I don't know who wrote this. I don't even know who necessarily is performing this, but it's so effective that I fall in love with it, and it frees me because I know that I'm not alone in what I think, what I feel. And this author, this playwright, this screenwriter, this screenplay, this actor, this director, all these people that came together to put this, to make this manifest, are showing me something that I can relate to, because this aspects of my life that it's reflecting back to me. And I'm not talking about Iron Man. I'm not talking about escapism, fantasy, sci-fi.
Right.
I'm talking about, character-driven stuff that deals with human beings that seemingly average, dealing with extraordinary circumstances and transcending that. And,
Right.
the triumph of the spirit kind of thing. And I think those types of plays, stories are very useful, especially times like now when people sometimes feel hopeless and there's no way out. It's, some people think it's through a spaceship. I'm going to go into another galaxy and fly around with Iron Man. For some people, it's watching a son, undying devotion for his mom on her deathbed, and them reconciling a conflict they have on Christmas Day. And now it's okay because they resolved it, and love ultimately is the answer. So it all depends on what you're looking for, man. But either way, whether it's a spaceship into the celestial body of stars, or closure with a family member through the catharsis of fiction that really isn't a fiction, when it taps into your heartstrings, man, and makes you cry, that's nothing fake about the tears you shed when you
Right.
watch something like that. That's real,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that it invokes a real emotion inside of you, and you can react
Yeah.
from what it is that the actor is portraying and able to bring out in themselves to make this role believable.
Yeah, man. I think inspiration is key, man. I think people need to be inspired on all fronts, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be the stage or movies, whatever inspires people to
Oh
feel that their lives are like children's life, where the imagination opens doorways. They don't feel contained by the rigid structures of a cubicle life and a conveyor belt, and march to the beat of the drum. And this is your life, and you have to make this amount of money, drive this car, live in this place. To me, that's fucking death, man. That's like
yeah.
prison. It doesn't communicate life and inspiration. That's a program kind of developed by a banker. And I bring it back to the banks again, That's a
Yeah.
banking equation. Now, cool, like, people want to be comfortable. I get it. The interesting thing I find, though, all those people that are comfortable in those whatever places they're living in, I'm not knocking it, still have the portal.
Yeah.
They have the altar, the screen. And what do? They click on, they download, and they watch something. To do what? To go someplace other than where they are. So what's wrong with where you're at, man? You know what I mean? I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but you see what I'm saying? It's still kind of, that portal is key in terms of variation in life experience, so that You're not defined by your house, what you drive, your job, how much money you have, what you look like, your fucking Instagram account. You're not defined by anything, man. You're just find and try to connect to something that makes you feel, so you don't turn into a robot, man.
Yes.
That has no soul, no heartbeat, a fucking, a demon, a devil,
Yeah.
an alien. Yeah, they're here. Oh shit, they're here. Yeah, not only are they here, they're gonna eat you. You know
Yum,
what I
yum.
mean? They're gonna take you and abduct you. Fuck, come on, man. Like, where does that come from? You know what I mean? So it's just like, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I know I brought up the alien thing. I'm not dissing aliens. Like, I'm sure, of course, there's intelligent life. There has to be.
Yeah.
God help us, or whatever it is that help us. But I'm not going to trust that interpretation in the way it's communicated through my fellow man. My fellow man is cuckoo, so I'm going to trust the interpretation of a possibility of other life. Of course, there's other life form, but the way that life form manifests, man, my vision of an alien isn't some reptilian motherfucker with, big eyeballs slithering around that that's an interdimensional being that can suddenly appear and snatch you and pull you back into some fucking place where you get an anal probe. Like, yo, that sounds like fucking cosmic Bible stuff. That sounds like the devil, man, like the devil shit, but like a 21st century version of the New Testament, man. Like, hello. So I don't necessarily get in line with the notion that they're coming. If they're coming, fine. But like, yo, I don't want to, it can't be about fear, man, and death. Why not have it be about life? If they are evolved, if this idea of intelligent life form is real, then can't they be more evolved than us? And maybe offer an olive branch in terms of, hey guys, you kind of got to figure some shit out soon, because if you don't, you're gonna get wasted, man. Like, we're not gonna waste you. You're gonna waste yourselves. You're gonna do it to yourselves. And we can't really intercede on your behalf because cosmic law says we got to leave you alone. So good luck. I hope you figure it out before it's too fucking late. I don't know.
I don't mean to cut you off. I need to put us on pause for like 1 second. I need to plug us in because I forgot to do that before we started. So I apologize. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Everybody else, hang on. We'll be right back. I promise. Okay, I'm back. Are we back? Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. We're plugged in. We're good.
Hey, Joe, is anybody still even there, man?
There's
yeah.
Annie says, Joe, first rule of Fight Club, smacks the head. Tino says the Lake of Shadows page has been blowing up all day. New fans because of this interview. Thank you, Joe and Robert. Thank you.
Welcome, man. Welcome, yeah. It was really, it was kind of scary, no pun intended, filming that.
Really?
It was kind of scary. Yeah, man, because it's there's macrocosmic monsters and there's microcosmic monsters, and clearly we're living in a time right now where the microcosmic monster is much more frightening than the fucking alien with tentacles. Correct? Yeah. Because
Right.
what did Trump say? Our unseen enemy, right? Okay, so dig, there's an unseen enemy, right? So we're filming Lake of Shadows in the middle of the summer. It's like 100+ degrees. I'm ready to have an aneurysm, man, because it's so fucking hot, right? And I've got to like manifest this rage at some point. So I'm thinking, oh shit, I'm either going to stroke out or something's going to come out of the water and eat me, right? But then Michael Rodriguez is like, no, don't worry, everything's fine. But like, you may want to be careful. I think it was either Tino or Michael. Someone warned me about the water itself. Like, watch the water, man. Like, why? Because there could be like hepatitis in there. Like, people throw shit in there, and I'm like, yeah, but there's people swimming. Yeah, I know they're swimming, but I'm just telling you, there's people swimming there, and maybe they're immune to it, or maybe they don't care if they catch the plague. But the point is, Rob, if you cut yourself or something, you may want to like rethink stepping in the water. So I was like tiptoeing, trying to get in the boat, because we had to get in this boat to film out on the lake, right? So I'm like, okay, how do I get into the boat without getting the fucking plague on me? Holy shit, the plague's gonna get on me. So I had microcosmic monsters coming after me. Fuck whatever the monster is in the movie. That was scary. Okay, fine. But I was more worried about the ones I couldn't see that were gonna end my life and get in my bloodstream, and then some fucking tentacle's gonna come out of my neck one day. Like, oh shit, you got a lump here. What is that? It's just, where were you? Because you hear these stories like people like Burt Reynolds, or who's one of my favorite actors ever, and you're like, who? Burt Reynolds, like Last Movie Star, Smokey and the Bandit, that kind of stuff. So Burt went to film in Asia, man, right, or someplace, and I read his biography, Enough About Me. I'm plugging his book, Burt Reynolds' biography. It's called Enough About Me. Great book, and by a great man. Anyway, so Burt Reynolds went to film this movie, and he went in the water, and I guess some kind of bacteria, something got in him, some microcosmic fucking little life form that wanted to live in his body, got in his bloodstream, man. So when he came back to America, he wasn't feeling too well, needless to say. So he got a test done, and they think, oh yeah, man, you got this thing in you, and we got to get it out. Like, so I was like, I was thinking about that. Like, oh shit, the thing is good. So Lake of Shadows, you think, oh shit. So it was anyway. That's my Lake of Shadows story. It's like, wow, were you afraid of? Wow, was it scary filming that? Yeah, I was afraid. I'm afraid of the fucking water itself.
That should be scary, because that shit happens in a lot of places.
Yeah.
You get those little different bacterias and little, I don't know what the fuck you call them. They look like little worm things. They're all fucking weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. I think they call it Ebola or something, right? Ebola, like they grow out of you. Yeah,
something else we can close the country down for, but that's just me.
Yeah, like that, familiar. Anyway, yeah, let's keep it light. But yeah, so kind of like that. So yeah, but it was cool to, but it was let me continue with this a little bit with respect to Tino and the crew, because they were very nice to me, and so Michael Rodriguez is a cool guy, and so yeah, anyway, so yeah, it was hot as hell, and but we had a good time, it's nice to I work with Jamie. Jamie is an up and coming actor, and then some other people that I don't remember their names. Don't hate on me now. I'm old, man. So give me the old card. I can't remember anything, So, but yeah, whatever. So dig, man. So it was just really nice to work. What I like about doing independent films, specifically Lake of Shadows, is because Tino was so humble and Michael was nice to me. And you deal with a lot of these studio people types, and they're cool, and they got to do their job, I guess. But there's this kind of rigidness and constipated psyche, and fucking everybody's tiptoeing around, worrying if they're gonna upset the balance and get fired. So it's kind of a drag, it's not fun. So when you do independent films, ideally, not always, but ideally, you find yourself in situations, hopefully, where people are working together to build something that they believe in, and I felt that for Tino. It was really important to him to authenticate that experience based on the tragedies that had happened at the lake, with the drownings and this kind of curse that's, kind of hanging over the lake, like, whoa, it's a bad place. And we talked to one of the sheriffs, and he was kind of filling in the blanks, saying, yeah, I asked him some questions. So like, a lot of people died here, huh? He's like,
yeah.
they drowned. And like, well, what's down there? Well, basically, and he's explaining. I don't want to give too much away. So there's some shit down there, and then and so people get tangled up on things and they drown, and it just seems to be this repetitive pattern that despite people drowning and other people knowing about this, they still come back. New waves of people to die, I guess, So you think they figure something out at the point, maybe it's not safe to go here. So thus this idea that, well, maybe there's something else going on here. Do you know what I mean? Like, if there's a lot of people that go swimming, Joe, that go to lakes and little ponds and they don't die. I mean, like, they go swimming, they have a good time, and most of the time they don't drown. So when you have a situation where a lake has a high body count, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Is the Loch Ness monster down there? What's down there, man? Thus Avocado Lake, thus the movie. So hats off to everybody involved that recognize this kind of Twilight Zone music vibe around this place. And it was just a really cool experience. And I hope I get to see the movie at some point. And it was just fun to work with everybody. Thank you, guys.
Oh yeah, they're great guys. I've had the pleasure to meet Tino and Michael. Michael's been on a set for a film that I've done before, and I actually got to sit and watch the very end of Last American Horror Show to be filmed. It was actually at the studio that I do my other show at. They actually used it for the end of it, and holy shit, like, it doesn't even look like the way he had it all set up and planned out. It doesn't even look like it's the same place. You wouldn't even think that it was done in a warehouse. Like, are you saying this really looks like it's the inside of a jail or something? Like, this looks really cool. They're really cool people. They're very creative. They're very humble, very down to earth, easy to get along with guys. They're always willing to help. And yeah, I really do enjoy them as well. I'm glad that you enjoyed them as well too. And I'm glad that you got to work with them, because then I can see you in some of his stuff now too. So yeah.
It's not a requirement though. Just so
Okay.
I don't need you to see me. It's cool. Thank you for saying that, but it's not a requirement. It's cool. I don't want to come off as a hypocrite. I'm talking about, like, going to the beach and no requirements, just show up. So I don't want to go back on what I communicated in terms of my philosophy by requiring you to observe something. I mean, if you feel compelled to look at stuff because your heart dictates that, then do it. Like, you can't tell anybody. Like, it's interesting with movies and stuff. I always find this interesting with people about movies and stuff. Like, oh, you should see this. You're gonna love this. Well, how do you know I'm gonna love it, man?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like me trying to tell you, Joe, like, you're gonna like this music. How do I know? Cussing. That's the cussing. How do I know what you're gonna like? Music, movies, all this stuff is a very kind of personal thing, right? That's why critics kind of get me nervous, because how are they going to know what I like? A lot of the stuff that on the Rotten Tomatoes, they rip it apart, I actually like. And the movies they think are fantastic, I'm like, oh, did we see the same film? So that's when I realized that it's just a subjective thing, and that, when you're compelled to watch something for whatever reason, that whole process, whether it's vicarious, just clicking along, like, oh, that catches my eye. If I tell you to watch something, I mean, you're kind of an anomaly, because you actually went and saw The Mule, you saw Anarchy Parlor. There are people that interviewed me sometimes, they don't even take the time to research any of the stuff I've been a part of, which is fine. Maybe they're busy that day. But my point is, that's my point, which is that you can't dictate to people what they're going to see, what they're going to watch. They're going to watch what they feel like watching, and are compelled to participate. You can't blame them for that, because that's, like I said, either they're spending money to do that, which, it's not easy to make money, right? And then they want to have something that satisfies them. Otherwise, they feel like they got played, two, they got money got stolen from, and they weren't even fucking entertained. Like, hey, man, you didn't even take me out of myself. I didn't get that orgasm that I was looking for. So then they hate you for taking their money, not giving them what they want. And I don't blame them. And I've had movies, I'm like, oh man, I got taken. I thought it was going to be good. And I can't get the money back. So that's why I think this whole notion of, like, hey, check me out, check it out. It's like, no, people will watch. You will watch. I will watch what I feel compelled to watch. And I'm not going to lie about that, But like I said, I think it's really cool that you took the time to watch Parlor. There's things I liked about the movie. You said a lot of nice things about it, but if you notice, I didn't know, yeah, it was great. I told you the truth, my truth, that, yeah, it was some things that were really wonderful about that film. and the experience, and the things I just don't fucking like about it. I think that it was a missed opportunity. It really was. And I
Right.
don't care who's watching this. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
feel that there's a lot of situations like that. So my point, so, you know, with movie making, whether it's the director, the producer, the audience, whomever, this is a very kind of personal thing, man. Like music.
Right.
You know, people like the kind of music that they like, and you got to just leave them alone and allow people their feelings and not try to tell them like, hey, you need to, you know, fuck, you can't tell nobody nothing.
Right. I get what you're saying. I got you. Yeah. Jesse says, thank you so much for this broadcast. It feels like encouragement. Robert Lasardo, you rock.
Thank you.
Tina also says, thank you, Robert. And to let you know that I was also his hairstylist on the shoot of Last American Horror Show too. Yeah. Yes, Tino, I did your hair. And I smoked you out behind the dumpster. We'll throw that out there again too.
Yeah,
uh,
that's funny, man.
Sheesh. So do you have any other projects that have come out or that are coming out that you wanted to maybe share with everybody?
Yeah. I'll be specific so I don't bore what's left of the audience with my rambling philosophies. Yeah, there's a few things that occur to me. There's a film coming out called Bridge of the Doomed, starring Michael Pare, Kate Watson, myself. It's produced by Michael Mahal and Sonny Mahal, directed by Michael Sue. It's a zombie apocalypse film. I think that'll be out this year. There's another film starring Richard Grieco, Tara Reid, myself, called Attack of the Unknown. It's an action thriller, aliens, invasion stuff.
That one looks dope. That one looks really dope. Because I like sci-fi too.
Yeah. So Attack of the Unknown, also produced by Michael Mahal, Sonny Mahal, directed by Brandon Slagle, starring Richard Grieco, Tara Reid, myself, and others. That comes out, I believe, this summer, maybe August. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure it's getting a summer release. So Bridge of the Doom, Attack of the Unknown. What else? I got a Christmas movie that's going to be released, I think, before Christmas. It's called The Talking Tree, starring Doug Hutchinson from The Green Mile, Sally Kirkland, George Stultz. It's basically kind of like the story I was telling you earlier about the son wanting to reconcile with his mother before she passes away on Christmas. So it's a kind of endearing, gut-wrenching, tearjerker Christmas type of movie. So it's basically a story of reclamation. So it kind of has a sad but happy ending. So that I'm excited to participate in something that I guess would be considered a Hallmark movie, maybe not. I don't want to categorize it, but so that's called The Talking Tree. That comes out, I think, before Christmas. What else? I'm sure there's something else. I just can't think of it. What am I working on? I'm getting ready to do a movie called Mind Games. I'm going to film that in Florida. That should be coming up soon. That looks interesting. Oh yeah, another film that comes to mind, starring R.J. Mitty from Breaking Bad, Dove Cameron, myself. It's called Isaac. I'm still working. We got kind of shut down in mid-production while that was happening, but I'm excited about this film because it's kind of in the same vein of, like, I don't know, have you ever seen a film with Christian Bale called The Machinist?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's a thriller, psychological thriller, young man who's dealing with all sorts of issues, let's say, and you're not really sure how to discern what's he's experiencing real time as opposed to his own inner psychological projection. So it kind of keeps the audience off balance in terms of what's real and what's not real. And it's a kind of a disturbing tale, kind of like The Machinist, but I think it could potentially be a very interesting character study and a brilliant film directed by Josh Weber. And I don't know when that's going to come out, clearly, because we haven't finished it, but it's definitely a project that I'm excited about.
Yeah. You have to let me know when that comes out, because it looked good.
And there's several others. If I've missed anybody who's watching this, I'm sorry. Maximiliano Cerci. Max Cerci is a friend of mine, a director that I've recently allied with to do a couple of movies, one with Steven Seagal, another film with Michael Pere, a horror comedy set to be filmed in Illinois this November. So yeah, there's some stuff in front of me that I'm very grateful for. And if the world doesn't end, maybe we can all, you can fulfill your destiny and I'll get to fulfill mine. Be kind of nice.
I guess we have to stay indoors and find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
One day we'll be out of here. So.
And then what? And then what?
And then what?
What have we learned? What have we learned in our cloistered monastic lockdown? Have we come through it with some kind of realization so that when we go out, we have a greater appreciation for things? Maybe, maybe not. Who the fuck knows? We'll see. Everybody's got their own trip.
Hell no! After 3 days, I'm probably gonna be speeding down the street again, yelling and cursing at people to get the hell out of my way.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Hey man, it's a process. It's a slow, laborious, agonizing evolution. Mankind trying to find its way in the darkness for some hope of light somewhere. That's why the beach is so nice. It's all lit up and the sun is out and the water glistens and occasionally you see dolphins come out. And you go, "Hey, dolphin, what's happening, man?" And they say, "Rob, what are you smoking?" "Nothing, man."
Got that electric lettuce again over there, Rob. Jesse says he hopes the world doesn't end. And he also says that I do feel more inspired.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, bro. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Lasardo, do you have any last words?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for, allowing me an opportunity to vent and talk and share. And I also appreciate anyone that took the time to move through this experience with us. Thank you for tuning in to Joe's podcast. Is that correct? Did I say it right? Am I supposed to? Is that how? I don't want to give it a label. Is it Joe's podcast?
Say whatever you want to say. I'll give it to you.
I appreciate everyone that tuned in to watch Joe's show and put up with my shenanigans. And so thank the audience, because without the audience participating, we don't exist. So as always, I bring it always to the audience because they make us happen. We don't make them happen. Exactly. The time they spend and the attention they give us is why we're doing this, in hopes that maybe something that was communicated in all this rhetoric helps somebody feel less alone.
Yeah. And to know that there are other people that, can relate to your philosophies and your ideas, and you know what I mean? Because like we had somebody earlier in the comments say that they like the way you think, that's refreshing to them. They don't hear a lot of people talk like that. So yeah, I get what you're saying. So, and I thank you so much for being on the show, because I'm still very nervous, even though like been talking to you for a while. But I do appreciate you coming on the show and telling, everybody who is participating in my show, who I also do appreciate very, very much, sharing with them what you've got going on and, things about your life. Because a lot of people I notice, when they get interviewed, they don't really get asked about them really, like what makes you want to do what you want to do? What makes you tick? Why are you interested in this? Because, or, what advice do you have to give to other people, instead of, what does that tattoo on your finger mean, sir? Is it a tribute to someone in your life? Did someone hurt you? Were you abused as a child? Like, yeah, we all have our reasons for that. That's not my business. So where did you go to school?
No, well, I take my hat off to you. I take my hat off to you in terms of being comprehensive enough, sensitive enough, intelligent, insightful enough to recognize the importance of opening the book for real and look and see what's in there. Right on. Good for you, Joe. Good for you.
Thank you. And again, thank you very, very much for being here. This is definitely a milestone in my life, and I will mark it in my book. So, okay. And thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you guys. Thank you.
Everybody. I really appreciate you guys being here tonight too. And I hope you guys join me next time. And I hope you guys check out our Anarchy Parlor and Lake of Shadows when it's finished, and Bridge of the Doom when it comes out, and all these other
Attack of the Unknown. Attack of the Unknown.
Yes. That one, I'm really excited to see that one.
The Talking Tree, Christmas movie for people who want to feel warm and cuddly. and play Christmas carols. And Josh Weber's Isaac.
Isaac. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I will see you guys next week. Say goodbye, Rab.
Adios, amigos.